Talk. Light Talk. Lumen Brothers. Light Talk.
Good morning. This is Stan in Gainesville, Florida, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Hi, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas, and today we are speaking with another great designer on Light Talk.
And this is David in beautiful Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers. So, hey, today we have a special guest today. We have Dawn Chiang here today.
Yay!
Dawn is a good friend of ours, and we're all so happy that she agreed to do this. It took some arm twisting. We said, come on, Dawn, it's going to be okay. Then we sent her some...
Just took a lot of time.
Sent some,
Everybody's
some
busy.
bottles of wine and things like that. But yeah, so Dawn's here. So, hey, Stan, why don't you give us a little bio on Dawn?
So sit back and let me read this concise Dawn Chiang bio for you. Dawn's lighting design credits include Broadway, Zoot Suit, co-design for Tango, Passion, and associate lighting design for Showboat and La Cage aux Folles, as well as resident lighting designer for New York City Opera, including a little night music and a broadcast on PBS's Live from Lincoln Center. Off-Broadway, she has designed for Manhattan Theater Club, the Roundabout Theater, and co-designed the first 2 seasons of the Encores concert musical series at the City Center. Her regional theater credits include the Guthrie Theater, Mark Taper Forum, Denver Center Theater Company, South Coast Repertory, Syracuse Stage, Arizona Theater Company, and the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. She has earned 2 Lighting Designer of the Year awards from Syracuse Area Live Theater, 2 Dramalog Awards, nominations for a Merriman Design Award, a San Francisco Bay Area Critics Award, and a Los Angeles Drama Critics Award. She has worked on projects all across the globe, including Europe, Australia, China, and Canada. And Dawn designed a live touring show for Disney, worked on the Las Vegas and concert tours for Paul Anka, The Carpenters, Diana Ross, Loggins and Messina. She has served as project manager on special projects for Theater Projects Consultants, Richard Pilbrow's original company, including 2 swimming pool spectaculars in Macau and central China. Wow, what have I left out?
Welcome, Dawn.
Hi guys. How are you?
We're great.
Great to have you.
Terrific.
By the way, Dawn is helping us break in some cutting-edge technology today. Stan, why don't you tell us about it?
It's cutting, all right. Yeah. I've been working for a month to figure out how to make it more convenient for our guests to get on the show without having to become audio engineers. So I, the lighting design neophyte, is working with sound. So I've got like a quick tap device from JK Audio coming out of an old 1990s desktop phone. So Dawn is speaking into both Skype so we can have our conference, and she's speaking into her landline phone, which I will say, copper is better than cell phone. There is a difference. That goes into a preamplifier, which is we're still learning how to tweak. That goes into my USB mixer and into a separate channel in GarageBand so David can patch this all together. Let me just say, if this works, it's an accomplishment. So we know her sound will be a little bit different today, but understand that Dawn is calling in using a telephone system.
A landline, a dinosaur in its own.
That's right.
in its own time.
She's in a phone booth on the corner of 42nd.
Right.
Phone booths, remember those? Right.
So Dawn, you've been at South Coast Rep, but you didn't look me up.
That was probably before you were there. Oh, South Coast. I was there actually just a couple years ago.
Like I said.
Yeah.
Giving you guilt.
I was looking longingly up towards in your direction, but we were not being released out of tech.
Yeah. Okay. I'll let it go this time. But next time, please look me up.
Absolutely.
He has a nice house. He's by the beach. We'll give you a drink.
Yeah, Long Beach is great. I'm so sorry. We were so close.
I was probably out of town anyway. Right.
Yes.
Anyway, but welcome to the show. You know, you've got such an amazing career, and there's so much we want to talk about in like 45 minutes. But let's get started. Why don't you tell us what it was like to be on the road as lighting director for Paul Anka?
Well, that was always an adventure. We had kind of two modes that we worked in. There were the one-night performances, which were during the summer. So there was probably a 30-day stretch where we were in a different city in a different amphitheater doing the show. So every day felt like you were aging by another year, just because you're up at the crack of dawn, loading in, focusing the show, doing the show, loading out, getting a shower in the dressing room before we headed off to the next city. We were it wasn't a bus and truck, so we were all flying. As a matter of fact, the company manager for the tour was actually a group tours agent from United Airlines. And I remember the very first day of the tour, as you got on the bus to go to the airport, he handed you a stapled stack of, this is in the days of printed airline tickets.
Right, I remember that.
So it was the stack for the summer. So you had in your hands literally thousands of dollars of airline tickets, and he said, don't lose it.
Wow.
so that's what that was. So it was in the early part of my career, and it was a great learning experience in the sense that, if we were doing 7 shows that week in 7 different cities, if you didn't get something right today, you had 6 other chances this week to figure out how to make it work, which was great. Repetition, lots of just over and over and over and over, and going to different venues every single day between Canada and the United States. Sometimes you'd load in all the company switches would be stage right. Next venue you're going to, they're going to be stage left, so you're going to flip everything around. I was the one who directed all the stuff coming off the truck. That goes down left, that goes up right, that goes into the dressing rooms, and on and on and on. And then you had to flip it in your head if like I said, the company switches were on the other side of the stage. And you were calling the spots to a crew you just met that day. And so you were calling a show cold to a different set of spot ups every single night.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, we were talking about being the shot caller, and there was that great animated video of the actual shot caller for Pink Floyd's 1972 tour. Have you seen that? It's on YouTube, or just go onto our Facebook group page. It's really hysterical because it's like working with new people every night, and some of them aren't very experienced. Right.
So, yeah, I think I've actually seen that. And so I learned how to get it down to the least number of syllables. And, so it wasn't these long, drawn-out setups and warns. And also to be as concise about the information as possible. One of my early not thinking it through completely was, for a sort of impromptu bow for somebody, I said, and spot 2, pick up the guy with the red vest. There just happened to be 5 guys in red vests on the stage. So the answer to the question was, which one? So I had to be more specific. The guy, get the guy on the drums.
The drums. So, that's those things in the middle.
Right. So the guy in the middle. So that's what I mean, that you had 6 more chances this week to get that right. You go, okay, I want to do that. Scratch that one off the list. Let's move on to the next. and for somebody coming out of school and starting the first few years of their career, whether it's touring and dance, I was touring with a concert act. That's a great way to get a really condensed amount of experience in a short amount of time. And then the other version of touring that we did was Paul was the main headliner for the Las Vegas Hilton, currently known as Westgate. Is that right? Westgate Hotel?
The Westgate. The infamous Westgate.
Yeah.
In its glory days, it was the Las Vegas Hilton, and Paul was the main headliner for all of the major holidays. So there was one year I spent 2 weeks of every holiday living and working out of the Las Vegas Hilton. So 2 weeks of Memorial Day and 4th of July and Labor Day and Thanksgiving and on and on and on. And just living out of the hotel and casino. And if you wanted, you could stay completely indoors in the building for 4 days at a stretch if you wanted to.
That's Las Vegas. Yeah,
That's
you got to
Las
stay
Vegas.
inside.
Yeah. And so we would do 2 shows a night. The show was so big, it took 2 days to load in. Those were the days of all those showrooms were doing headliners. So there was never a dark day in any of the showrooms. So let's say Barry Manilow just closed the night before. His crew was striking out after the second show, so we start load in. So the second show is, 10 o'clock, comes down at midnight. They're out of there by 4, 5, 6 in the morning. We start loading in at 6 in the morning or 8 in the morning and go until dinner time. And our show was so big, it took 2 days to get the entire set and all
that's
of the lighting
a big show.
in.
That's
Yeah,
unusual that they'd let you do that in Vegas back then, because they're losing revenue.
No. We did a show. We did 2 shows the first
you
night.
did the show. Oh, my God.
You did the show, but with 60% of the rig up and focused, and I think there was still more scenery yet to come, but we basically had the bandstand and everything. It was still a good show.
Yeah, of course.
It's just that we added on all the extras, so we did the 2 shows the first night, go get some sleep for 8 hours, and come back the next morning and put the rest of the show in. And so that's what we did. So since we were clean back repeated times over the year, I put all the cues from every song Paul ever did into the console, knowing that we were coming back and the lineup the song list might change at any time. And if that was often true with Paul, he would want to kind of change things up. There's always this chemistry of the same way in a Broadway musical. You're rearranging the sequence of scenes and songs and stuff, trying to find the right chemistry and balance there so you get the momentum where you need it. Paul would do that with the song list, and every few weeks or so, he would just kind of tear up the song list in his head, and suddenly what you have printed on your little cue sheet is no longer what we're going to be doing as the next song. So the sound, and I kind of knew when this was happening. I kind of got a feeling for it, and I would tell the engineer, sound engineer was like, I think tonight is going to be what I call 52 pickup. He's torn the song list into 52 little pieces and tossed it up in the air. So the sound engineer and I are playing Name That Tune based on the little bit of patter that he's doing before he goes into the next song,
right,
and what key is in and what the intro is. It's like, I can name that tune in 3 notes. Okay. And then one night he went into some song we hadn't done since last summer. And oh my God. And I said, okay, let's go to Q 410, Q 410, go. And off we were to the races. So that's how that was. It always made it interesting, but again, it taught me how to continue to think on my feet and how to refine things and keep things sharp. So those were the kind of 2 modes of touring that I did with Paul, and it was great experience to have early in my career, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Really amazing. You were also on another really famous band that I loved also. David mentioned this earlier. Talk about the Carpenters. What was it like touring with them?
It was great. I mean, first, immediately, this is dating me. So
all of us. Are you kidding me?
And us, too.
All of us. So it was one of the first gigs I did coming out of school.
Wow.
And the designer I worked with, H.R. Poindexter, had designed the show, and then he was giving it to me to take out on the road. So this was more, we were going to theaters as opposed to amphitheaters or casinos.
Nice.
So we were in different theaters up in Canada. I remember being in Northrop Auditorium, which is very, very wide. It's wider, seemingly, than it is deep. And this is the simple days. I mean, if you remember the Carpenters and where the technology was, this is also where we had those hand crank genie towers.
Oh, yeah.
Not a genie lift,
Right.
a genie tower.
Crank it up.
Crank it up. Yeah. So it was very basic.
Like Vermets.
Yeah, you got it. You got it. So it was very basic and very good. I do, and these were okay. Let's put another date on it. These were the days of these fancy schmancy things called Walkmans.
Yes, with cassette tapes.
And I can remember standing in immigration. I think we're going into or out of Canada, and Karen Carpenter was in front of me, and she was listening to something on her Walkman and kind of humming, singing along with it, and just voice
Oh
of
my
hers.
God.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
my.
She had said that she aspired to have a voice like Barbra Streisand, to be Barbra Streisand. She didn't think she had as good a voice as Streisand, and we were all saying, "No, you're gorgeous. Your voice is gorgeous."
Can we pause for one moment? Because Karen Carpenter, in my opinion, had probably the most beautiful voice in the world. I mean, I do a lot of opera. Everybody knows that, and sometimes I think I have the greatest job in the world because I can always close my eyes if I've created something ugly on stage and listen to the most beautiful voices. But you know something? I can't imagine a more beautiful voice to listen to than Karen Carpenter's, and I envy you for spending that time and having that.
It was wonderful.
You must have been in heaven.
It was really wonderful, and it was. There was a the ease that you hear in her voice was there in person as well.
I loved it when she sang "Superstar." I think that was
Yes.
my favorite. That's a song that written by Leon Russell, and
I'd forgotten that.
Yeah, it's Leon Russell's song, and I could listen to that song forever. I could listen to all of her music. I mean, it's what a great duo that was.
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I wore out the vinyl. We shouldn't make comparisons, but Streisand to me is, it's a unique voice. Karen's was something else.
It was an angel. Karen was the
the
voice of an angel.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. And the other reason that tour was very special to me was that the drummer was Cubby O'Brien, which I remember we were in rehearsals before it went out on tour, and Joe Layton, a Broadway director, was the director of the show, and he was, rehearsal was breaking, and he was saying, so everybody's going their separate ways, and he goes, "Hey, Cubby, can you come over here? I got a couple notes for you." And I look up from my notes and go, Cubby O'Brien, the drummer? There's only one Cubby O'Brien. He was a Mouseketeer, and I had a crush on him when I was 5. So I got to be on tour with my first crush ever.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was great.
Oh, wow. Cubby. I know Cubby. I used to watch the Mouseketeers.
Cubby and Karen, yeah. Cubby and
Karen.
The two littlest Mouseketeers. And
let me tell you something.
Cubby.
For our listeners that may not know this, Karen Carpenter was a kick-ass drummer. She was an amazing drummer. I mean, she really was. And wow, 2 great drummers on stage. Fantastic.
Yeah. Wow. So that's the extra fun. And we did play Las Vegas as well. I do remember that now. And but mostly we were out in more legit venues. So those were both great ways to learn a lot early on.
Well, let me take you in a different direction. I remember that bio that we just heard. Swimming pool spectaculars.
What is that?
Let's talk a little bit about your time with theater projects and House of Dancing Water in Macau.
In Macau. So House of Dancing Water was the 3rd swimming pool show that Franco Dragone directed. He had conceived of and created O in Las Vegas, which was the first big swimming pool show, which continues to sell very strongly to this day. And the second one was Le Rêve, which is at the Wynn. And then he was invited by City of Dreams, a hotel casino complex that was being built in Macau, which is just 40 miles west of Hong Kong. the only legal gambling area in China, although Macau is a special administrative region and is under slightly more relaxed rules than People's Republic of China. So Franco said yes to this, and Theater Projects was retained to be the theater consultants on the design and planning of House of Dancing Water. Now, I've worked as an affiliate for Theater Projects Consultants for a long, long time, and that started from meeting Richard Pilbrow, 30 years ago, and slowly being asked to come in to do special projects at Theater Projects. And then when Theater Projects got the House of Dancing Water gig, the partners were going to Richard, he was still running the company, and said, so who do we know that A, has enough time to dedicate to this project, because all the other project managers in the office carry any place from 6 to 16 projects on their plate at any given time. So who has the time? Who has a familiarity with how Franco and his former employer, Cirque du Soleil, work in terms of the style of projects that they do? And who knows enough about this sort of very leading edge technology that they always use? And I didn't find out till later that Richard said, well, that sounds like Dawn. So that's how I got a phone call and said, would you consider taking on this project? And I said yes. So we worked on the design and planning of that facility from the ground up. So what that means is figuring out, what does the theater look like? Michelle Crett was the set designer and overall had the overall concept for the theater space itself. Michelle has worked with Franco on many of the Cirque du Soleil shows that they did together. Franco did 10 productions for Cirque before he went out and formed his own company. So Michelle went back to the original 270 degree wraparound seating that you often saw in the tent shows that Cirque did. And it's 2,000 seats. It's only 14 rows, and it's a fairly shallow rake to the audience. But everybody can see the pool. But it's really quite intimate for a 2,000 seat space. So it's really quite wonderful. So it's a big swimming pool. It's I'm going to try and convert it back into imperial here. So the pool is about 26 feet deep. It's 160 feet in diameter, and it holds 3.7 million gallons of water.
That's a lot of water.
That's enough. That's enough water to fill 5 Olympic-sized pools. And I think in the United States, the only larger pool is the one that they have in Houston, the Neutral Buoyancy Lab for the space program.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So it sort of puts O to shame.
So this was bigger than us. And the performance area, the part of the pool that you saw, so the pool extended to underneath the back row. If you envision a circle, 14 rows of seats, and then you drop a line down behind the back row all the way around, that's how you got the 160-foot diameter. But the performance area of the pool was only 65 feet across in the center portion, and basically the rest of that donut, if you will, was the quote-unquote backstage area, although it was underwater. So they stored all those scenery and props underwater.
Wow.
For the most part.
That's
yeah,
crazy.
I mean, there were a few things that floated on from the backstage ring and all of that, but a lot of the big scenery was stored under the seating area, underwater, and for some of the big scenic stuff, because the divers, there were 24 divers in the pool, are basically your stagehands, or 12 to 24 divers in the pool. They're your stagehands. Not only are they dealing with performer safety, which I can tell you about, but they are also the ones who are pulling those scenery into place and all of that. And they had an underwater, what we call the tricycle, a battery-operated tug, if you will, that was a tricycle that could pull one of the main scenic pieces of Pagoda onto the center lift. because there were 11 hydraulic lifts in this pool.
Can you tell what's the funniest story from that
The
experience?
funniest story? Oh my God.
Yeah. Is there one?
Oh my God. I don't know about funny, but just there are a lot of oh my God moments on it.
Okay,
Boy,
tell us one.
Caval,
Tell us one.
Oh,
what's
you
happening?
evolved because this. Even as I'm telling it to you, it sounds outrageous and crazy. And there are 40 high-speed trolleys overhead, all the Cirque du Soleil type trolleys, for the aerial acts and scenery, and 258 water fountains and all this. So, as you know, Las Vegas has over the years become, the construction trades have become more and more sophisticated as they've built these different hotel casinos and all of these spectaculars. Like all those
Right,
shows,
right.
Ka did not happen overnight. It was not the first
Right.
thing to be built. I mean, you started
Right.
with the fire and water fountain outside of the Mirage and things like that. So there was a learning curve to this. So flash forward to Macau, and because this show opened in 2010, so flash forward to like 2005, 6, 7, 8, 7 and 8. So we're jumping in at the peak of all of this sophistication, and we're taking a construction management team from Australia who's also paired with a construction company from China State and all that. And so you're telling them about, okay, so we got 5 main hydraulic lifts in the main part of the pool, and they each weigh 10 tons each. And and like you're going, oh my God! I'm in a meeting with the guys from the construction management, going, okay, so how are we physically going to get these 10-ton lifts into the building, and how are we going to get it from the loading ramp and get it into where it needs to be delivered on the stage? And so, it's all seeming very hypothetical and very wild and crazy to them. And then one of the office assistants happens to walk up to where we're having our conference, having our meeting, and drops a bunch of photos on the desk. And it's part of our team was in Canada where the lifts were being built, and you can see like 6 people standing on the center lift. It's you're just seeing all the steel ribs. It doesn't have the top surface on it, so you're seeing all the steel I-beams and ribs on it. And so you're looking at this photo. Let's say the photo is the size of the palm of your hand, and you're seeing 6 little teeny tiny ants, and those are people. And,
Oh my God!
And then I was passing the photos around, and then they finally got the idea of the scale of the whole thing, and you could see all 3 of these very accomplished managers kind of get this deer in the headlights look.
The size is
They're like, oh my God. And so what I came to realize over the course of the project is that I had to keep talking at people until I could find something, until I got that deer in the headlights look. And then we could actually talk about what actually needed to be done, because it seems so fantastical and so far out of possibility that you needed to find something that was a bridge to the, oh my God, this really is what it's like. And then we could talk about, okay, so how do we physically move these 10-ton objects into the building?
How did you move the 10-ton object into the building?
So there was we left one side of the building open, and so we could load things in, and there was a dirt ramp that came down, so you could basically get to upstage left, and then there was enough steel girders in the infrastructure of the building that you could just do pick points and pick point your way out over the pit that was the pool and get it out there. But I needed to have their engineers verify that, yes, the steel could handle it. Yes, you could do the pendulum points to move these objects along the way. I mean, this opening was large. We intentionally left the opening large enough so that you could get heavy machinery into the building to do all this kind of work. So,
can I ask a follow-up on this? Dawn, did you have an engineering background, and you were a woman at this time working really in the construction trades?
That's right.
How was that? And did you have the background to speak their language?
Yes Yes, and yes, and yes, sort of, and yes. So what it is, I'm the daughter of an engineer. So my
Okay.
dad was an engineer in Silicon Valley, and basically he was an inventor. He worked for Admiral, and he first started working with Admiral, and he helped invent the color television.
We work with Philo Farnsworth?
He probably did, yeah. And
Wow, interesting.
so I just remember, long story short, besides working as a lighting designer, there were a few years that I also worked as an assistant film editor in feature films in New York City for like Sidney Lumet and Marshall Brickman and people like that. So when I was an editor in film editing, I took there was a one-day full-day seminar for video engineering for non-engineers. Led by the head of video engineering for ABC in New York. So I went to do that, and it was all very cool. And we learned about the history of where black and white television overlapped with color televisions, so that they would be broadcasting the information for both black and white and color television for a few years overlapping, and eventually would drop out the black and white. So I called up my dad that night because I remember that he had worked in television engineering when I was quite young. And I said, "Hey, Dad, I just learned in this seminar that they put the color television information on a subcarrier frequency of black and white for a few years until they dropped out black and white." And he went, "Yeah, and that subcarrier frequency is blah, blah, blah point." And he took it out to 10 decimal points. I said, "How did you know that?" He says, "I'm the one who developed that subcarrier frequency."
Wow. That leads to the next question in a way. I get that. I heard somehow that you have some pretty strong feelings about how touring theatrical productions and repertory lighting can act as a concentrated form of learning and doing. Tell us about that.
Well, we talked a little bit about concert tours, and the same thing is also true of theatrical tours and repertory lighting. So let's start with repertory lighting first. I was resident lighting designer for New York City Opera, where we were doing, maybe 8 or 9 different productions in any given week, or at least 6, and we probably had 10 or more different shows active in any given 10-day period. And this was a 6-month season, so it's a very intense schedule. It's sort of like 6 months of summer stock nonstop at what was at Lincoln Center. So if you had Madame Butterfly performed last night, when the crew came in the morning, they would strike Madame Butterfly, and then they're going to set up the set for Tosca for an afternoon tech. We'll tech it for about 3.5, 4 hours. Take that out and put in Girl of the Golden West for the evening. So that means we're doing 2 changeovers a day, and I'm refocusing lights twice a day, 6 days a week for 6 months. And every time I stepped on stage, I had about an hour and 15 to focus 100 to 150 lights. And I was focusing usually about 1,000 lights per week. Sometimes we brought in some of the other stage managers to help, take care of different parts of it, and so on and so forth. And so it's pretty intense. If I thought I was fast and accurate before I worked at City Opera, after working at New York City Opera, I was definitely fast and definitely accurate, because you had to.
That's cool.
Again, the repetition of that is just so concentrated that and there was a lot of money riding on it, so you could not slack off. So that was a great learning experience in that regard, and also just keeping all of those shows straight in your head.
Were you there when Gilbert was there?
No, it was after Gilbert.
Yeah, it was after Gil. Okay, good.
It was after Gilbert, although we did revive one of his productions of Street Scene, which was about 19 years old.
I know that production. I've seen it.
It had been about
That's a great
19 years
production.
since they had done it, and all of the creative team was now deceased.
Wow.
And so we have, City Opera had all these great sort of algorithms for depending on which year a production opened, if they may now have split out. At one point, the box boom circuits were ganged stage left and stage right because there were only a limited number of circuits. This is before. You have to remember it started in patch bays, and then later on it went to dimmer per circuit, and all this. Anyway, the board op would figure out which year it was created in, and to do all the machinations to split out stage left from stage right, so on and so forth. So we turned on the first cues and stuff and are going through the show. And it's looking pretty good, but it's looking really flat because it's coming mostly from the front.
Absolutely.
Yep. And so I figured that out and went, okay, I see what colors are being used and what proportions. Let me split that out to the box booms and the torm. And I basically took Gil's idea, but now that we had new positions and new circuits, I split it out to sidelight because street scene is basically a two-story set. You're basically going to have a 12-foot deep, 15-foot deep in one. That's it. That's the set. So I made it into sidelight instead of front light using his colors. But it was beautiful. Something like that kind of repertory, you get to actually see the thinking of another designer,
Yep.
both in terms of colors, intensities, cue placement. It's an incredible privilege to be able to do that. And anybody who works in repertory, some of the other designers you've spoken to can speak to that as well. It's like having a full scale laboratory to be able to look at somebody else's design from many years before.
Very cool. Hey, let's talk a little bit about education.
Sure.
Dawn, you and I spent many years at Bing's Clam Bake. And I know that you spend a lot of time, speaking of Gilbert, the Hemsley portfolio review, and I see you at every single portfolio review I go to. And then and I'm going to give you a little shout out because no one spends as much time with any student than you do. I mean, you really, you are an educator. You are amazing. And I've watched and I've listened. I've did a little like eavesdropping, and you are so helpful to these students, and it shows this amazing dedication that you have. So I want to thank you for all the students that had the pleasure of spending time with you. But let's talk about the Wasserstein project, a theater development fund. Tell us more about that.
Okay. Well, first, thank you very much for that, David. I definitely believe in passing it along. I mean, I'm the beneficiary of many people who did that for me, coming up through the ranks, and I fully believe in passing that along. And I could certainly wear a headset 12 months a year, but that's not as much fun for me as being able to share it, to share it with others, whether it's teaching others, students who want to learn about more of the craft and the art of lighting design, and also speaking to patrons or donors about theater, the magic of theater, my excitement and passion about theater, and getting them excited about it as well. Is all part. I've noticed that I started to notice that with friends of mine who didn't work in theater, who worked in Wall Street or ran their own businesses, and they started getting interested in stage lighting because I was their friend. So I realized, hey, I can actually share this with others. So the Wasserstein project was started by Wendy Wasserstein and her stage manager Roy Harris back in 1998. Wendy had thought that getting to see theater was the birthright of every New York person who lived in New York. So she took a test group of 8 students, high school students from one high school in New York City, and took them to see 6 different Broadway shows that season that were funded by TDF, who run the half-price tickets booth in Duffy Square. And more importantly, after each show, they would all go to some rehearsal room someplace in the theater district and over pizza for 90 minutes talk about the show. And the students got to talk peer to peer as opposed to student to teacher. And I was there to help kind of facilitate that conversation and also interject stuff about theater, be it on the dramaturgical side or the stagecraft side or theater magic side and all that, and kind of give maybe a little bit perspective from behind the scenes or behind, upstage of the footlights, what it's like to create the story that you just saw. And so I've been a mentor now for the Wasserstein Project for the last several years, and it's one of my favorite things to do. It's one of the most incredible outreach programs I've ever witnessed or been a part of, in terms of by the end of these 6 shows, these students are really turned on to theater, whether they're just going to attend shows or whether they're, some of them have gone on to be playwrights. It ranges all over the place. And TDF also gives them, as a graduation present, they get $100 account with TDF. And so they can buy tickets for the next year on that at TDF discount prices. And if they keep using it, they can get up to 4 years of $100 per year to see shows and bring friends. So it's incredible. Yeah, so TDF has learned that not only do you take people through a program like this, you also start to encourage them to exercise that muscle about, I'd like to bring a friend, or I'd like to bring my sister. And what show would they like to see? And you are actually starting to actively think about how would you like other people to engage in theater. And they've learned that that's the muscle that starts to incorporate theater into people's lives. So it's an amazing program.
Dawn, I noticed that you work with the Behind the Scenes Foundation, and I have to say, I don't know what that is. Can you inform me a bit about that?
Sure. It's a not-for-profit organization that was created to help financial support to entertainment industry professionals if they are in need from being seriously ill or injured. Because as a lot of us know, it's really sometimes hard to get insurance as on a steady gig, especially if you're a freelancer. And also, if you get injured, your means of feeding into the insurance has stopped. So this was created several years ago as a way for those in the industry who have been injured. And you can be a stage manager, you can be a stagehand, you can be non-union, you can be union. It doesn't matter. You have to show that you were making your living for 5 years or longer in the entertainment industry, and then you can apply for a grant. And the grants are given out on a rolling basis, so it isn't like a quarterly review or an annual review. As the applications come in, they're reviewed, and grants are tailored to the individual, which is really amazing. You might have seen the Long Reach Long Riders motorcycle event. That's been that's part of one of the charities that they donate to is Behind the Scenes. You can pick from Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS, Behind the Scenes, or a couple of similar charities in Canada. So it's a great way to help support others in the industry. It's not meant for actors because actors have other charities that they can go through the Actors Fund and so on, but this is for everybody else.
I see.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
and
That's
the
great.
other part, which is really cool, which I learned when I joined the board of Behind the Scenes, was Amazon, and some people know this already, Amazon has a sister website called smile.amazon, where it's still Amazon with all the same prices and everything, but you can pick a charity to which Amazon will donate a percentage of your purchase.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So if you want to, I selected Behind the Scenes as the charity that I donate to, which is really great. And if you want your prop department and your costume department to use smile.amazon, it'll just keep shipping in.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's cool. So you can either go to just type in smile.amazon and do that. Also on the Behind the Scenes, it's behindthescenescharity.org. There's also a link to Smile, Amazon Smile.
Well, that's amazing.
as well.
I'm going to tell my departments about that.
That's right.
Monday morning.
Everybody needs to tell
Me
your
too.
departments.
I will be letting everybody know.
Yeah.
We'll post that
We
on
should
our
post
page,
that,
too.
and just so because as politics goes on, we need to be more giving because there's less.
Right.
Pretty soon they'll stop funding the Special Olympics. Oh, wait a second, that happened. Well, no, he overruled his.
David, you're
I
so
know,
clever.
but he actually
Slip that in there.
overruled it after all the crazy feedback on that. But yeah, but anyway. Hey, guess what? We are out of time. So,
Take us out,
not
David.
yet,
Hold
because
it.
we gotta-
Hold it. No,
Yeah,
Hold it.
we're not out of time.
We're not.
We have time. No, we have time to thank Dawn.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Taking the time to be on this episode.
Well, thank you.
Of course.
It's been a great
and
fun.
for working with me very patiently and generously to get this new technology working. I've been watching the waveforms and making slight adjustments, and hopefully you're going to sound good.
I hope so too. I hope this technology works for you and works for you going into the future as well.
Yeah, well, you're added to the lexicon, the pantheon of guests on Light
Oh, my
Talk.
God.
Fantastic.
I don't know.
Thank you.
You may regret that, Don. I think Ann McMills is really, really second guessing her choice here. But but anyway, thank you, Dawn. You are fantastic, and you and I have spent a lot of our careers looking at each other across the room, and it's just really wonderful. The work you do, the obviously the charitable work, the educational work, and of course your beautiful design work. So thank you for adding to the beautiful world that we take in. So
Well, thank you guys.
And we have to get her a hat, probably. She needs a hat.
Give her a hat, for God's sakes. The least we can do. But anyway, that Hammond organ solo in the background tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. Be sure to follow us on our Facebook group and subscribe to the podcast. You can find us on any of your local favorite providers, and be sure to subscribe to Light Talk itself. That way you won't miss 1 second of crazy Lumen insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast.
And if you jump into a big pool or decide to litigate, the law firm of Flecht, Flocked, Flare, and Glare and their paralegal Snoot will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Gainesville, and deep in the heart of Texas.
And tune in next week when we discuss forgetful directors, specifying new and unfamiliar equipment, working with jerks, and princess phones.
All of that and a new sponsor, Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge, humor, and wonderful interviews like Dawn Chiang from around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk. Say goodbye, Dawn. Thank you.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dawn.
Bye.
Fantastic.
Light Talk.